Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. I'm your instructor Joy. Let me first play a tune for you. This was the beginning of the Mozart string quartet Divertimento. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for your continued support. Here also my Patreon page, booking lessons with me, volunteering with your time, sending me kind questions, comments. I really appreciate. This is one of the very important repertoire for any string quartet to learn and master at some point, and very beloved piece too. So string quartet is made for 2 violins, 1 viola and 1 cello. So I was playing the first violin part. I thought this was a great example to show you how one could get better at sight reading, or more precisely, 5 things to avoid when you're doing sight reading. So remember, the sight reading is the one that, let's say you're sitting, you're rehearsing, you're practicing for the first time with the rest of the group. It could be small group like the string quartet or Indian orchestra, or with opera pieces and so on. One should not confuse when we are practicing on our own in our own practicing room, reading the music that we're about to master for the first time. That is not sight reading, that is called just first reading, which is a bit different approach. So I'm talking about sight reading. That means you're with your other colleagues and other musicians with you, and then you're trying to play through just to get to know it. So common mistake number 1 to be avoided: stop to correct. Remember, when we're playing from sight reading, the focus should be fluent music. When you stop and correct, that we normally do as a first, and when we're on our own practicing, but when you're part of the group, even when you're as a soloist rehearsing with a pianist, you have to keep the flow. So let's say you start playing, your first violin, you start playing as a first time as a sight reading with your ensemble musicians, and then let's say, and oh, alert, there's almost the 16th note. So what we commonly like to do, we slow down a little and then we stop again. Then we try again. Try again. And until like that. So stop and correct the practicing. That is later when you do your own practicing on your own. But when you're doing sight reading with a group, focus on getting moving on with the music, with a flow of the music. That leads to common mistake number 2, or the mistake to be avoided, is trying to play every single note. So here later we have we all of a sudden have a very fast scale, and sure, we want to be able to play all of it, but when you're playing as a sight reading for the first time, sometimes it's just hard to know which one it is. Instead of playing every single note, focus on playing the first note of each measure. So let's say, I don't know here, diga diga diga. Just skip it when it's difficult. A little later, there's a little more harder passage to play. So if there's a passage like this, here, of course, later one should spend time to master this passage. But when you're doing for the first time or playing from sight reading, it's very difficult to play every single note correctly, or with a correct bouncing bow or correct dynamics, all of it. Instead of trying to play all of note, try to play the first note of every group. So here, if that's too difficult, I was playing just first note of every group of 4 16th notes. Just play first note of each measure, and that's okay. So here, actually play the first note and skip the second beat and play third beat, and that's okay too. Now that leads to point 3, things to avoid when we're doing sight reading is try to play difficult positions. Remember, this is not time to test whether we can play high positions for better tone. So there's a excuse me. So let's say I want to play this one a little intimate in high positions, which you can do later, but when you're doing sight reading, it's not time to test it, to go easy. Try high positions, meaning 3rd position, going to the 5th, 6th, 7th position, high positions. It's not time to do that one. Choose easy positions, easy finger that you can play relatively okay. Point 3 to avoid when we're practicing: shortening the long notes or skipping the rest. So when we're practicing on our own, we can skip the rest because there's no point to count 4 measures and things like that. But when we are playing from sight reading with an ensemble, remember, while we rest or while we hold certain notes, there are other musicians playing, so one has to respect that one as much as playing it well. Rest or long holding notes are as important. For example, the beginning, I hold a very long note, then 2 beats. While I play this one, we sometimes, when we run out of bow, we just shorten the bow, go next one, like that. But remember, while you play long note, there's a second violin, viola, playing very metronomic. So we have to count it well. Make sure you pick the tempo that you can play. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, like that. Make sure you hold that one long. Last one, point 5 to avoid or be careful with is when we're trying to play all these hard notes. Sometimes they're double stops, sometimes they're ornaments, sometimes they're trills, which we all wanted to do. So here we don't have a double stop, but let's say if I have let's pretend we had an interval of 5th. We have to play like that one. When you're doing sight reading, it's hard enough to make the music somewhat playable. So just get rid of the harmonious note, meaning focus on playing the top note. Even easier when you have we have this grace notes, this one grace note, that's main note, grace note, main note, and get rid of the grace note or trill. Again, later you can learn this piece, but when you're doing sight reading, your focus should be staying with the musical flow. Like that. And there's a little later. Of course, we want to play all that one, but for the first time sight reading, get rid of the grace note and try to be in a rhythmic flow so that you're with a group. And that's enough, yeah? So I hope you can try yourself. Sight reading skill is as important as any other techniques to master. I get a lot of questions about how one could improve. It's just simply by doing it. But knowing what to pay attention, what not to pay attention, meaning prioritize the important part and focus on the top priority stuff. Yeah? I hope you can try yourself. Thank you for watching and hope to see you again. Bye-bye.